You're listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast, the podcast where we delve deeper into landscape business, interviewing legends of the UK landscaping industry. So, join host Nick Ruddle as he explores their thoughts, insights and experiences. That's here on the Grow Landscapers podcast.
Hi and welcome to the Grow Landscapers podcast. I'm Nick Ruddle and today we're privileged to have someone who's very well known and respected in the industry, former Barley chairman, Mr. Paul Downer from Oakview Landscapes. How are you today, Paul?
I'm very well, Nick. Good morning to you.
Good morning. And, we've been working together now since, 2013. And I know that you've won loads of awards, but I did have a little look on the website and I was blown away. I mean, how many awards have there been? I mean, there've been Barley, there've been Pro Landscape, the Essex Business Awards, Investors in People accreditation. There's so many things on there. If someone wants to go to your website to have a look, it's pretty impressive. Do you know how many you've won now?
I think we've lost count now. We're well into double figures, Nick. But as you touched on there, we're pleased that they're not just for doing good landscaping and actually what you do on the ground. We've won a number of employer excellence and business awards on top of landscaping awards, which I think says a lot about the team and the culture and what the business is about. So that's very important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of them. And it's not just great at what you do, but great at running a business as well. So let's go back to where it all began. Then how long have you been in the industry? Where did it all start for you?
I've been in the industry all my life, actually, Nick. I was brought up on a farm in Berkshire and always had a passion for landscaping. So believe it or not, 37 years now when I totted it up. So a long time, but it's gone quickly.
Yeah, that's the trouble. It does go too quick. Time flies when you're having fun, though, doesn't it? So, what would you say made you go into business for yourself then?
It's quite an interesting one, that one. It wasn't something I initially planned to. I've been involved in 2 startup companies previously with other people, and basically, like often happens in life, I had a divorce. So I decided to have a divorce in 2004 from the company that I co-owned and decided to do my own thing. So at the time, it wasn't particularly a pleasant experience, but it wasn't something I actually planned. I did look at taking over another company, but in the end, setting up a business and third time lucky, off we went in 2004.
Often happens that way, doesn't it? You know, if you finish one thing, you think, well, what am I going to do now? Well, start my own business.
Well, there's that classic saying, isn't it? One door shuts, another one opens. And I do agree, as you know, believe heavily in planning. But in this instance, it just came about by chance. It just seemed the next thing to do. If I wasn't going to take over an acquisition of another company, the next best thing was to start all over again.
I think it's the catalyst you need sometimes, isn't it, to make that leap of faith, take that leap of faith to work for yourself.
Definitely, and I did find it quite difficult at the start because I'd gone from a company with sort of over 40 employees to just initially on my own and gradually built it up, as you know, over time. But I did find sort of mentally it's quite difficult going from a big team to working like a lot of business owners do in the smaller companies, almost in isolation a lot of the time.
Having to work a lot of working in the business stuff and having so much stuff to learn in working on the business. When you've got a big team around you, you've got support, haven't you? But then I suppose when it's you, it's just right. Oh, that's it. So I've got every single hat on. I'm the chief salesperson, marketeer, operational kind of people, the accounts department, the HR department. You're literally everything, aren't you? So so what did it look like when you started then in terms of people, office, vehicles, jobs, work-life balance? What was it like when day one?
Obviously it's very small. I was lucky I had a small setup at home office like a lot of companies do, keeping the overheads down, and I was fortunate to be able to rent a small plot at a commercial yard that was just around the corner. So I had the classic 20-foot container store and a skip and a little compound. And then the office was at home, which was good because there was a short commute to work every day.
Very nice. Yeah, it always helps. It's nice when you start. There's some definite pros in the early days, isn't there? The overheads are low. You don't have to travel very far, but
Well, you mentioned the Essex Business Award we won in 2007. One of the things that they really liked about that was from day one we kept overheads really under control, down to the bone, which was important. So obviously, as we know, how many businesses fail in the first few years, it was critical to do that. And they commented on our control of costs and overheads was one of the main reasons we were successful in that award.
Yeah, I think for anyone listening to this now, I mean, if you are in business, just gone into business now, or whether you've been in business for a long time, it's so important to keep a handle on those overheads, especially at the moment with prices and costs of all sorts of things going up in the business, to make sure that you really sort of have a lean ship, definitely in the early days, massive benefit to that. So, okay, so what does your business look like now? So that's where you were. What describes to me now? What it looks like?
Now we've got 42 staff. The little site that I used to rent, we now own the 4-acre site. We built our own offices here in 2015-16. So we've got purpose-built offices and operating centre. Put a further 3 buildings on the site for storage facilities and looking after our plant and equipment. And have developed a small nursery holding area here. So it's grown tremendously since 2004, far exceeded my expectations too. I think at the outset, if you'd have said to me in 2004, what was my dream business, I'd have said, well, 1.5 million turnover, clear 10% net each year, nice, easy life, enjoy it, take it easy, crack on. I'd have been more than happy with that at the outset. But clearly things for one reason or another have grown a lot more than that.
Yeah, done a phenomenal job, really moved everything on. So it's not just about the landscaping side of the business now. You've got the yard, which is now a business in its own right, isn't it? What you get from that in terms of income and business on site. And
we've got a lot of tenants now that rent property, office and space. And that's been quite good. That supports, the main core business, which is clearly landscaping. But being in control of our site and having the room to develop and grow has been really important. So we've never been constrained by anything going forward.
Yeah. So sticking to the landscaping side of the business now, then what would you say the most important elements are to running a successful business?
People, in one word, I would say. As you know, we spent a lot of time developing the team, the culture, the whole structure of what's important to a company, and it's definitely always comes back to people. So good staff and good clients as well. I'd include clients in that as well, obviously, but generally with your staff. In the early days, I was somebody that was always be led by somebody's CV. When I was recruiting, I think, crikey, this person's got better CV than me. They do a great job. But over time, as you know, we've looked at things a lot more in greater depth on attitudes and behaviours of staff, getting the culture right. What does an Oakview person look like? And now we recruit far more on the person than the makeup of their skills or how impressive on paper their CV looks.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? I know we've had so many conversations about it over the years, but the fact that even your staff, even your team will say that person's not an Oakview person. The fact that they refer to them as, oh, they're not Oakview, because in their mind they know what Oakview represents and the kind of attitude, the values, the skills, the mindset, and the work ethic. That you stand out like a sore thumb if you ever are fortunate enough to slip through the net, which doesn't really tend to happen, does it? Because it's so obvious if they're going to be a good fit or not, because you've defined what that culture is and you've defined what those values are. So important. I know people, whenever I've said to you about you've done so well, Paul, you'll always pull me up and say no, the team, Nick, the team has done
definitely.
It's so ingrained into you as a person that it's all about people, and the fact that you look after them so well, I know you do, and you treat them like family, and you've gone up to 42 people that still have that real sort of close knit kind of culture, that feel that you care for each and every one of them, which is so important, because if you do genuinely care, people will want to work for you and they respect you, and it's a two-way thing, isn't it? So it's definitely a two-way process.
Well, you'll know that in the industry, as in a lot of industries in the country now, we're all struggling to recruit. So I've always been very passionate about believing that if you pay what they say, pay peanuts, you get monkeys sort of thing, to coin a phrase. But really, I think if you invest in your people and, actually put systems and processes and training and just do a lot more and be a good employer, that will take you forward very successfully, because staff retention is so important. If you're constantly recruiting, and generally we're recruiting from the same pool, as one goes out, one comes in, that's a great time vampire on the business. So retaining your staff and developing them, and then you haven't got to go through that whole recruitment process, which I think is a bane to any employer out there really at the moment. It's very, very time consuming and costly as well.
Yeah, financially and with time, and very, very costly. Yeah. It's funny. It's a common theme with all the people we've had on the podcast already. It does tend to come down to people, really does, and it's amazing. But when people know that, they still know that, but they don't necessarily know. Okay, it's all about getting the right people. Well, how do you make your business an attractive company for people to want to come to work for one? And then how do you go about doing that? How do you create values? How do you create the culture that you would like to ideally have? And it's, they don't know where to go, where to start. So what would you say to that? How if you were in someone's shoes now, having not got that stuff in place, what advice would you give to them?
First thing I'd say is you have to be patient. That won't happen overnight. You won't change your culture. Hopefully, if you're a good employer, which I'm sure most of the people that be coming on here, if not all of them will be, is that you care about your company and you care about your people. So you're almost like you're always the halfway there. But it's coming down with clearly defined values for the company that people embed in. And, we talk about above or below the line, and this sort of thing, and just slight changes of attitude with people. Now, in the past, I've had some excellent employees do fantastic landscaping work, but they're a little bit rough around the edges and this sort of thing. And when we're looking at appraising them and developing them and reviewing them and their personal development plans, we've tended to focus more of them as people. Not, it goes without saying they're brilliant landscapers, do a fantastic job, but there's all these other softer interpersonal skills that are very important of how they're perceived when you're dealing with clients in certain situations. Do you, throw your hands up in the air and, get all of headstrong when something goes slightly wrong? Or you a bit more calm and measured and think, right, let's look at the best way of dealing with this, come up with a plan and move forward. So yeah, but that didn't change overnight. I think if you're a good employer, good boss, good leader, hopefully you've got a lot of the right character traits to lead by example. And I know we spent time, and one of the things I wanted to do was be a better employer. I think you've got to continue learning. Keep working, not just on your staff, but obviously look at yourself. How are you perceived by them? But the one thing they'll follow is your example. If your example's good, you're going to be 3/4 of the way there. And obviously, you've got to practice what you preach, as they say.
Yeah, well, they're a reflection of you, aren't they? So, if the owner's not demonstrating, then why should they be any different? They say that if you keep doing what you've always done, you get the results you've always got. So in order to become a better leader or become better at anything, you've got to learn new skills. So if you don't have the knowledge, then once you get the knowledge, things become easier. But the trouble, I think, the thing I find quite common, not just in landscaping, but in all industries, is that people just don't necessarily recognize that they've got to learn and develop themselves to get better results. And the business will only improve when the business owner improves and gets more knowledge,
Definitely.
Otherwise it just stays the same.
There's lots of courses and things you can go on initially that develop you as a person, that might make you better to be a better employer than others. But you've still got to have this appetite for continuous learning. Yeah. And I think there's no sort of thing, you don't go and pick up do a course and then suddenly you're going to be a fantastic employer, and things change, situations change. You picked up on it earlier, Nick. Majority of companies started small. They weren't suddenly, you didn't have a massive company overnight. So when you start small, that employer, as you intimated with myself, you're wearing about a dozen hats. You're doing everything, working all 15-hour days, almost firefighting. It's quite good fun because it's in the early days and you can see things developing, but it's almost organized chaos some of the time because that's where you are. But you're doing all those roles. But as the business grows, your skill level and your skill set and how you deal in situations has got to change and grow with it as well.
Yeah, and it's not sustainable to do everything all the time, is it? And you'll get more busier and busier and busier because you get in a reputation, and taking on more work, taking on more people, and you get to a point where you can't do that, and it's not viable to do it that way.
No, it's very important that as you get to a certain size, especially, that you've got a defined structure in there with your team, so you know where you are. And as we've spent many a time discussing, you spend more time working on the business rather than in the business and that sort of things, getting yourself pulled up a bit further away so you can spend the time on those important parts.
Yeah, I think we hear that kind of expression, working on versus in, a lot, and I think when people truly get that the value the business owner brings to the business is when they spend their time, the majority of their time, working on the business, when they truly understand how important that is and what kind of stuff you'll be working on when you work on the business. At that point, that's when the business grows, because as soon as you work in the business, you might as well press pause on your business development until you get off the tools or stop having a job within your own business. The business doesn't move on. It only moves on when you can start to work on it to develop it to the next level.
I definitely agree with that. And also, I think what you actually do is you stifle the people that are on the next tier below you, or the people around you. Because if you're constantly getting involved, meddling and dealing with what they should be dealing with, it's almost in a way like you don't almost trust them or something like that. And it's only when sometimes you give people that responsibility and that, that's your area, and empower them to start making decisions. And, there's, as we all know, there's an element of risk taking in everything we do in business, but you can't stifle the business by holding everyone back. Otherwise, you're actually a detriment to the business. You're not going to be a strength for it at all.
I think that's a really important word. That empowerment, I think, is the key thing. When you empower people and you trust them to do a good job, and they might make the odd mistake here and there, only then will they grow, and they may surprise you, they may surprise themselves, and often, very often, more often than not, in fact, they flourish and do well.
Definitely.
And I think as a business owner, when you start the business, I think you had this, and I think most people do, it's your baby, isn't it? And it's like handing your baby over to someone else and trusting them that they're not going to drop it and drop the ball, if you like. And I think a lot of people are maybe a bit scared of that.
Definitely. But with experience and life, I think you get a little bit more risk averse. We'll do that, as you said. You make mistakes, but the mistakes that are made, as long as they're a learning exercise and you move on from them, people generally don't make mistakes on purpose.
No.
But they're not catastrophic mistakes either. And that's one thing I think, right, I learned by that. And we've all done that. That's the classic is fail your way to success, isn't it? This sort of thing. Not that hopefully we've done that, but a lot of people have, but you have to trust that. And I suppose 20 years ago, a situation like that would, I'd be all, het up about it and think, blimey, what's gone on? I knew I shouldn't have given it to that person. But then you soon realise that, that's not the way. Otherwise, you're just going to burn yourself out, and you're not going to have a structure. And you say you need to, as I said earlier, empower people to take the responsibility and grow with you. Otherwise, you're not going to develop that team.
I think one of the generalized principles we work on with Action Coach is 100% participation. Always got to keep working hard. You got to keep doing the things that you need to do to move forward, and you got to participate. The only failure in life is the failure to participate. And the trouble is, I think too many people are scared to make a mistake, and like you say, you fail your way to success. Thomas Edison, if you remember the story, not remember back, at the time, they said that he failed 12,000 times when trying to invent the light bulb.
Yeah.
And he didn't give up. He said, no, I didn't fail. I just found 11,999 ways of how not to make a light bulb. So definitely. Every single time he failed, in inverted commas, actually just got that much closer to finding the right solution. It's the same in your team. We've got these 6 keys to a winning team, and the 5th one is supporting risk taking. And if you don't, then you're too protective, and you don't want to give people that empowerment, and you want to sort of control people, then people will be too scared to do anything and step out of their remit, because if they do, they may think that they're going to get told off and and reprimanded in some way, or even lose their job.
Yeah, there's definitely a fear with a lot of people of failure, but as I think I'd much rather be challenged on something. The bigger the challenge, the more I'm up for it, really. And I really think you can do that. And as long as you plan and you work in a systemized way and you've got procedures and processes in place, so you're setting the ground rules up and working to those, you're minimizing risk all the time. But without taking risk and calculating risk, we wouldn't do anything. We wouldn't be where we are today.
I think that's so important. And it's all very well having great people, but you can't just have great people and let them run amok in your business. You've got to have systems, processes, ways of working. This is how we do things here at Oakview Landscapes. You know, this is what we do at this stage, and then this is what we do at that stage, and this is how we do this at this stage. This is the Oakview way. If there's nothing to come into, then there will be chaos, and great people will leave. You know, because of
I totally agree with that. And I suppose, as I said earlier, the fact that I'd come from 2 business startups earlier, when I look back, I looked at those as like an apprenticeship going forward. So I learned an awful lot of some of the things of not what to do, you know, the failures and things that went wrong there. Obviously, I learned by those, and it's being third time lucky and being out there again. What I tried to do was put the bigger thinking into a small company from the outset. So those processes were put in place when we were very small, when we only had sort of 10 people on board. So that was a natural progression. And I always try and think big, think bigger in a smaller company, because one day that small company won't be small. It's going to grow and keep going, and put those systems and processes in place early, so they become embedded, and then it helps you grow, definitely.
Yeah, I think if you're a person listening to this or watching this podcast now, and you're 5 people, you've got 10 people in the business, and you don't have maybe the systems and processes in place, then that'll be a good place to start. That's obviously what we work on the systemology side of our business, which is about defining that and making sure that those steps are in there. So people are just doing things in a consistent way, and that's all you want to do. But a lot of companies don't necessarily have that way. If they do have that way, it might not be set out very clearly. People may not be trained on that system. So if you don't have that system, I think, you know, like you did from the start there, is to define what that process is or what those steps are, which is great. Okay, marvelous. So what are the biggest mistakes or maybe the lessons that you've learned in all your years of being in business?
Biggest mistakes are quite an interesting one. So I haven't, to be honest. I thought about that earlier. I can't. That almost sounds like a bit egotistical, but there's been mistakes along the way, obviously. But I think I more like look at lessons learned. I think, because they can eliminate a lot of those mistakes. And the a couple of things I've always said is like taking advice and having business mentors. Obviously, that's how we got involved. If you look back the 10 years, it was actually 2012, so we went to our 10 years together. You'll recall that we come out of the recession. Business was pretty static, wasn't growing. And I felt we were at a crossroads, so I wanted to go across the road and up the hill. And I've been looking for about 2 years to find the right sort of business coach and mentor. And bringing that on, I think, was a real success, because, you know, the proof's in the pudding. We're still working together now, 10 years on. So I hadn't seen that as part of a journey where you get to the destination and then it's over. It's still continuing to grow. And while the successes are still there, if it isn't broken, why try and fix it? Let's keep this going. And that's been really valuable. And that's just for you. But I also say, from an industry point of view, we're very fortunate. We work in, I think, a fantastic industry where you've got great competition, but there's all good competition, but people share advice. There's a number of people I know that I can pick up the phone to or send an email to if I've got a challenge or a problem. But that's because I've been in the industry for a long time, and through Barley, the British Association of Landscape Industries, through the contacts there, I've formed so many great contacts who've become really good personal friends over the years. And when you build that sort of network of people, they're invaluable to get hold of, to actually find information from. And as I said earlier, you just never stop learning. So for me personally, 10 years ago, I wanted something where I could have a business mentor, a coach. I used to play a lot of sports, so I relate to sports coaching. Business and sport are so common. You know, there's so many crossovers where you can see a lot of commonality. And it just made total sense to me. And as you know, the proof's in the pudding from the results and the way the business has grown.
So I suppose your advice there is to, if people have got I don't know, issues or problems or whatever, then there's so many people within the industry. So other people that maybe have been there, done that, and had the same challenge and come out the other side, but also to get some kind of business coach or mentor, someone that you can talk to on a regular basis.
And especially if you go through trade associations, I say like Barley, the APL, Society of Garden Designers, all these things, they all have network, they're cluster groups, meeting groups. And, that was my first involvement as a student, was with Barley in 1986. And I met some great people there at the first meeting. And I was blown away at how much information you could pick up just sitting around the table for a couple of hours. As time's gone on, I've sat around the table with other contractors, and we're all having a chat, and we realised we're all pricing the same job, the three of us, and this sort of thing, which is always quite good fun as well. But there's no malice or anything there. People look at it and think, look, if you found a better way of doing it for a better price, good luck, and people work together. It's the poor competition in the industry we don't like, where it's poor work and this sort of thing. And but when you need good competition, that's really healthy for everyone.
Yeah, no, very true, very true. So what can you think of any sort of major setbacks or biggest challenges or obstacles you've had maybe in the last couple of years?
I think the biggest setbacks for me since I've been at Oakview have been things that I haven't been able to control, the external factors, and you just have to let them go, but you have to plan with them. Obviously the recession, as you know, knocked me really sideways, because we were from 2004 up to 2008-9. We were on a really good growth spurt. Everything in the garden was fantastic, and then bang, my accountant told me that when it happens, you'll know. It'd be like hitting a brick wall, and it really was. What I didn't anticipate at the time was, being a finishing trade in construction, everyone else was going into recession a lot quicker than us. So for about 9 months, I'm thinking, well, what recession? We're flying. And he said, you'll know when it hits, and it hit that October, and that was like falling off the edge of a cliff. So then, dealing with redundancies, shrinking the company, we introduced a 4-day week to protect other jobs, and it was just horrible. I think that's any employer's sort of nightmare. It really is. When you've got people pleading for their jobs, and you've got to reduce your headcount because there isn't the work there, that's not a nice situation to be in. And then, of course, there's the dreaded COVID that came along, exactly the same sort of way, when all businesses were flying and everything was going really well. Again, something you couldn't control. But I think, if anything, at the outset, for the first sort of month of it, the COVID, as you know from our working groups that we were doing our sessions, I think that was more stressful than a recession, actually, because it was the unknown on the unknown. And, to have clients phoning up when you've furloughed everyone to get your head straight and get your systems in place, and they say, oh, your construction, you're supposed to be working. I think it's supposed to be working. If you watch the news, we're supposed to be, stay at home, save the NHS, but the good old construction sector can go to work. And that was terrible as well. But in fairness, going back to the team, the resilience of the team through that, we put plans in place, furloughed all the staff for 3 weeks, then gradually after 3 weeks started bring them all back. So by the 1st of July that year, we had everyone back, and we're working safely. And we had no COVID cases through work. There were the few that we did have came externally outside of work. So we did protect the workforce. We did work safely. But again, the way the whole team adapted to the challenge of that, and what we were trying to do to work safely, made me very proud, but very stressful at the time as well.
Yeah, but so it's like, you said earlier, you plan and you plan and you plan, and I've never met anyone that's as disciplined like a machine in terms of how routine. You stick to your planning, you stick to the plan itself. You always do it on time. You follow it. You look at it. You review it regularly. But with things that are outside of your control, you can't actually plan for that, and you can't. But you've got to sort of negotiate your way through that. And I think people, everyone can be a great business owner when everything's going well, but you don't really learn much about yourself when things are going really, really well, because you don't there's not many challenges. But I think it's through times of extreme sort of conditions and crisis, you learn a lot about yourself and about others, and you become a lot more resilient and bulletproof as a business owner. And that's a common theme with other people we spoke to on this show. And I think it's the same with any industry, with any business in any country. You know, the more tough times you have, the better business person you become, and you learn a lot more.
And on that, as you know, obviously the third one I would say is obviously putting in is the loss of Jackie Jenner, our operations director, just before Christmas after a short illness, which again is something we're all going to face in life, whether it's personal, when it's a good personal friend, as well as somebody who's been instrumental in growing the business with myself and Matt and the rest of the senior team, as well as everyone outside. Nothing can prepare you for that either. And it's been a tough 6 months, but again, we're planning in time. We owe that legacy to go forwards to Jackie, as you know, on that side of things. But again, these challenges come up, but I'd say the ones that hit you the hardest, the ones that you feel like, as you said, you can't really control, you've almost got to accept that's what it is. Right, what's the best we can do? What is the damage limitation? How do we play this? And it's that uncertainty and unknown. And when you're planning and you've got everything else under control, that can be quite unnerving. Yeah. But the support networks and the groups that are around you that I touched on earlier, then again, they come into play because we're all in the same boat. You're not in isolation. You might feel like you are as a business owner, but you're not. Everyone's in the same group, and majority are often far worse off than you are. But you've got to pull together.
People think it's just them, and I speak to a lot of business owners, obviously, because of my role. But people are in their business and they think everyone else is doing well because everyone on social media is showing them all the good stuff. It's just like in people's personal lives, you only see the good stuff. But don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask people, because being a business owner can be a very lonely old place, as you know. And I think the more you can speak to other people, they'll probably be able to help you and definitely empathize with you. So one great bit of advice there, Paul, use your contacts, use people with industry, use your friends, because they're probably going through or have been through similar kind of situations to you. Okay, so moving on, here's a specific question for you then. What 3 tips would you suggest to improve a landscape business, the efficiencies and profits of a landscape business? If there were 3 things, and there may be more, if there are more, then please share.
3 things to improve the profitability.
Yeah,
that's an interesting one. First one, I'd say what every business should do on a regular basis is look at your overheads on anything where you can make a good saving on there, even a small saving across the board on things. That's a standard thing that we do on a regular basis. It is getting harder, but it's getting more and more important at the moment. We touched on that earlier. I think potentially other ways could be looking at ways where you can incentivize people more. Performance related stuff. I believe in giving back across the board. So we have profit related bonuses to staff at all levels. It just makes them think a little bit more, and I try and get them to focus on when they are purchasing. Did you just place one order, or did you get three quotes? Did you see, if you're buying the same product and it's a British standard product or something, there's going to be a variance in price. So just spending that time on due diligence of that, and also I think looking at various ways where you can work smarter too, where there's things where you can get marginal gains. One of the things we've been trying to do was, as we've grown and become more successful, we shrunk our operating area. We used to be a bit all conquering and not really seem to mind where we were traveling to. But when I discussed things with staff, they said that if I asked them one question, what they least like about the job is to travel. But they love doing the work. So what with the cost of fuel and that factor in mind and everything that's going on and our environmental footprint, we've really shrunk our operational area, and we found that we're still growing. There's enough work in that. But I think we really expanded our operational area when we were coming out of recession. You chase work then, don't you? But just trying to keep control of things and looking at things in detail, the small things, because a lot of little small and minor changes will add up, as we know, to quite an impact on the bottom line.
The law of marginal gains. So little wins everywhere, they multiply out a lot at the end of the year. And I think, yeah, it's important. It's good to sometimes stop the bus sometimes and think, right, where are we? What that's how we did business then, because we were coming out of recession. We wanted to go for all that, but what's the most efficient, the most profitable kind of way of operating now? What kind of work do we want? What kind of clients do we want? How do we grade the clients? Where are they? What areas do we want to? Because your fuel bill now has gone through the roof, hasn't it? I mean, it's just unbelievable.
It's gone up 45% from where it was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and it's the same for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the same for everyone. So I think now more so than ever, people are looking at how to, be more efficient. How can they save money? How can they work more efficiently? What systems and processes can we put in place? How can we train our people to do that and follow those? How to make less mistakes? How to finish on time, on budget, on spec? All those things now are under the microscope. You think, right, okay, now I've got to do it because I've got no alternative. Whereas maybe they should have been doing that all along, but it's only when times get tough then people do actually think, we're going to cut our cloth accordingly.
As I said, they're things that we review, as you know, regularly anyway. So it's best to have done it regularly rather than wait till you've got a real problem and think, what should we do? Let's have a look at that, because the problem could be embedded by then. So it's a regular review of those sort of things. It's very important.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, because I could talk to you all day, Paul. It's we've got a certain amount of time to get through some of these questions. So I've got a couple of other questions that I want to get through before we say goodbye. But one piece of advice, what advice would you give to someone who's got a landscape business at the moment, is a little bit stuck, wants to expand, but don't know what steps to take to get to that next level?
I like this one. What did I do 10 years ago, Nick? So yeah. Clearly, I wonder why you asked me to come on this, but now I know. The $1 million question is, from my point of view, is to get some professional business advice and coaching and that sort of thing. As you know, as I said earlier, I've been looking for a couple of years, and it's finding not just a bit like your staff, it's the right person. So there's plenty of people out there that sell you some kind of dream package that's going to do wonderful things for your business. But number one, you need to have some affinity with that person and feel that you could work with them. And I know I was your first client in the landscape industry, and now you've got several clients in the wider landscape industry as a result of that and the way that sort of developed. So not only do you tick the boxes in terms of being a good business coach and developing it, you also got great industry sector knowledge, which again is second to none, because you are becoming unique to our sector, which helps. And when I look back, and it's clear, as well as developing and growing the team, you've played an instrumental part in helping us get to where we are today. Hence, we're still working closely together.
Yeah, and I have not paid you to say any of those things. That was lovely.
I did laugh.
Totally unexpected, to be honest.
I was trying not to laugh when you asked me that question.
Yeah, look, it's funny because that's a perception you have from that question, but I've asked that obviously to other people, and they look at it in a different way. But from your perspective, that's clearly because you've been there, and you can
only describe what works for you, and yeah, as I said on the person, maybe if I got a different coach or a different person who had a different style and didn't get the same rapport that we've got over the years, because again, a bit like a lot of the people in the industry that have become really good friends of mine, you've become a really good friend over these years. You're not just somebody that works, you work for me or anything like that. We developed that relationship over those 10 years, and you have, not just with me, but with the rest of the team and the staff, and when you see the guys outside and things like that. I think that's really important. And you say, when you think 10 years, 10 years in business has gone just like that, hasn't it? And I'm sure the next 10 years go just as quick. Yeah. But that's important. It's getting the right person, the right blend. But especially when you are a sole owner of a company, even with the team around you, to have somebody external outside that you can bat things about in a professional way, who might look at something and say, well, have I reacted rightly to that situation? What would you do there? And that experience, I just think that's invaluable. It just really is. And it's like kept me sane over the last 10 years as well from times, with some of these things. And they said the stuff we did when COVID hit with the group and things like that, I know, and that's businesses across it. We all have the same problem, but to be able to go on Zoom in the big meetings we have and discuss things and throw things out there, I just think you can learn so much like that. I think it's brilliant. And I'm, as you know, always interested in giving back to the industry, to young people, students, other companies. I love it. I think anything where you can help somebody else, because other people do that for you, it's reciprocated.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing this podcast. That's why you're on the podcast, and that's why we want everyone to share other people's experiences from people that have been there and done it, and who are vastly experienced. So that's why we're inviting all the best of the best onto this show. You being one of them, obviously. So one final question then. So look, so many great answers, so many great nuggets that you've got. But if there was just one golden nugget that you could give to anybody trying to build their business from all your years of experience, apart from getting a coach, what would it be?
I would say really work on the people. I started with people and the team. There's that saying about making sure you've got the right people on the bus, isn't it? Because if you haven't, as we know, you can have all sorts of problems. And in my earlier days, I did have a few people that weren't what I would now definitely weren't Oakview people. And you didn't realise how much of a problem that causes the business. A lot of your great people, they won't even mention it. They just almost ignore it, give them a wide berth. But if you've got a square peg in a round hole of that, and they're obstructive, they're not putting together as part of the team, it's a bit like a Kevin Peterson situation with the England cricket team. You can be the best batsman in the world, but if you're a pain to the rest of everyone else and you're causing so much disruption, you haven't got a team, have you? No. So I think my biggest thing is really focus on the team and developing the team, and always, wherever you can, where you've got people in specialist roles, employ people who can do the role better than you can. At the end of the day, you're there as the business owner, the managing director, the chief executive. That's your role and your responsibilities. But your skill is also getting the right people in those positions and letting them develop and shine. You don't have to be the best accountant, but you want the best accounts person in there, for example. So, as you said earlier, and we've gone back to people, we've gone back to the team, everything comes back to that. And without the team, I wouldn't be here speaking to you today. And that's, I don't say that lightly. And I think if all good business owners were honest, they would be saying much the same as well. But that's just my personal view on that one.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, they say that your people are your best assets.
They really are,
and they are if they're great. But if they're not, they're your biggest nightmare.
But if they're not, Nick, as well, you can't just ignore poor conduct, behaviour, even if it seems quite sort of just a quiet word. Pull them up on it. 10 years ago, things would have gone on that I just turned a blind eye to that, or I just let that, or that's just so and so. Well, that's not good enough, is it? You think, no. Hold on a minute. And then my style is a quiet word. Don't want it to go any further. This is it. Take it on board, act upon it, and I don't want to come back to it. If I've then got to come back to it, or one of my other directors or managers has, then you've got to take it up a level. But my experience is usually that little chat, weren't happy with that, put that across to them, and then it's taken on board. But again, that's, with the right people, that, we're all pulling together, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, it's developing, you develop those sort of leadership skills over the years, don't you? How to deal with those, as opposed to just let them go because you want to avoid the conflict. And, a lot of people are the same, don't like that sort of uncomfortable kind of situation.
Generally nice people don't like conflict, do they? So, it's rather, but that doesn't, the problem doesn't go away. No, it just manifests, it gets worse. But it's the effect it has on other people. You don't actually realise till you've actually dealt with it. Oh crikey, I wish if I'd have known that, I'd have dealt with this a year ago, sort of thing. Yeah, whereas,
you end up losing your best people, won't you? You end up losing your best people because if you don't do anything about that,
exactly.
Person,
you've got to look after them. It's that respect. It's that two-way relationship. Yes, we've all got to go to work, but let's try and enjoy the journey. The majority of the time, make it a great environment to work in, and look after each other. The world's tough out there, especially at the moment with everything else that's going on. We've gone from Brexit, COVID. Look at this Ukraine. That what's going on in the world. We're in a mad world. So the more we can do to look after each other and try and make life a bit easier for each other and go forward.
I can't think of a better way to end the call. So that was very philosophical and very important piece of advice. So if people want to get in touch with you, Paul, how could they do it? What's the best way to get in touch?
Best ways, either email or phone. Paul at oakviewlandscapes.co.uk. they can come by yourself, Nick, to me if they need any further details.
Yeah.
I'm always at the end of the phone too, so I'm there. So yeah, more than happy if anyone wants to ask anything at any time. More than happy to help. So yeah,
abundant as always.
Let's keep pushing this great industry forward. It's quite an opportune time as everyone's busy building away at Chelsea at the moment too, isn't it? Too. So,
yeah, I'll be there in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate your time, your wisdom, your effort. And I'll catch up with you on our call tomorrow afternoon.
Look forward to it, Nick. Thanks very much.
Take care. See
Goodbye.
you then.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast. To get in touch and see how we can help you with your business by emailing nick@nickruddle.com.